Welcome to the latest edition of the SoccerWire Podcast. I'm Charles Boehm, and I'm really excited to bring you today's conversation. I got the rare privilege of sitting down for an extended conversation recently with Brian Wiese, the head coach of the Georgetown University men's soccer program. Brian has overseen a really impressive renaissance of the Hoyas program over the last decade plus, and it reached its summit last fall with a really spirited run to the NCAA Men's College Cup Championship, capped by a really epic match in the championship game versus University of Virginia that had to be decided by penalty kicks. It was one of the better soccer games at any level that I've ever been privileged to witness. I'm sure lots of other people enjoyed it. And again, it was also just a fantastic summit and just a great way to cap Brian's work in charge of the program. And the thing about Brian that I appreciate is not just that he's found success at the college level, but he's done so with what's generally been a really proactive, possession-oriented style of play. He prides himself on recruiting not just athletes, but student athletes who tend to stick around and finish their degree on the hilltop. And he's also groomed a long and growing list of future professionals. And so it was great to chat with him about matters great and small, not only pertaining to the college game, but the youth level. Brian is also a soccer parent, having watched his children rise through the D.C. area elite soccer scene. And he has a great perspective on the game at large and some of the things that we're doing well and we're not doing so well in the system as a whole. So check this out. Please listen, rate, and subscribe. Enjoy the conversation and let us know what you think, whether it's via a tweet, an email to news@thesoccerwire.com, or any other way you want to get at us. Love to hear feedback on this episode and all the others. And again, thanks so much to Coach Wiese for taking the time. Enjoy, guys. You know, everybody wants to get eyes like yours on their kid and learn about how the process works and how they can better navigate it. So I figured that might be a good place to start. And I know that's part of what you do, but beyond that, kind of the work you've done with this program, it's pretty incredible to me at least. And I think it's not that's been going on for a long time, but I think you kind of reached a new milestone.
Yeah.
With the big trophy.
Yeah, it was nice. It was
good. And then I guess I should maybe a better place to start actually is how you feel. How's the afterglow?
I'm worn down. I'm worn down. It's like I'm a hot tea here because it's like I'm coming off of being sick from traveling. It's been great, to be fair, because the university's been so excited and it matters. Like it means a lot to the community and the university and my perspective on it's actually pretty interesting because my time at Stanford back in the late 90s with Bobby Clark, who's my old mentor and why I coach and I played for him at Dartmouth and I was an assistant with him at Stanford for 5 years, went with him to Notre Dame for 5 years, and then I left there to be the head coach here, and he stayed at Notre Dame and thank goodness won a national championship himself before he ended up retiring. In 2013 he won, and but we got to the final in 1998 at Stanford and lost to Indiana 3-1 in the final, and it was the first real like catapult for that program to get anywhere near that milestone at that time, and we were so happy and we were jacked up and this is great, and it would have been good to have won, but what we did was pretty exceptional. And then at the end of the year ceremony that Stanford Athletic Department held with all their coaches and staff and donors, they had a big formal luncheon. We didn't even get mentioned as a team. As a summary of the year that was Stanford Athletics, we didn't even get mentioned. And I remember Bobby and I looked at each other and we're like, well, I guess that's the standards. Like it's win or go home, right? If you don't win the whole thing, you don't even get a mention. And the feeling was, if you did win it, somebody maybe would have popped their head in the office and said, "Hey, great job, well done," and then kept going down the hall. And that's that's what I really appreciate about this experience for our program, is that Georgetown as a community has been just so excited and embracing, and our alumni base is hugely energized. And we won the national championship, and I felt like we were on the field after the game forever because we were excited and the players were taking pictures and this and that and the other. But then suddenly you realize, man, there must be 100 alumni who are on the field too, wanting to take pictures with the trophy and wanting to celebrate with the players. And it was every bit a Georgetown soccer family, Georgetown University celebration as anything else. The president of the university was there for the final. We had a huge outpouring of our athletic department staff was there, just as fans, So it was. I think when you see the impact, like the video of the watch parties on campus when we won in penalties, you don't really appreciate it, because when you're playing in the game itself, competing in the game itself, it's all just about your own little world, your island that you're on, just from day one of preseason to the end. And then when you take a step back and you see how many other people have really come along for the ride, that was really pretty satisfying.
And now that you've won a game like that, I have to say, I guess you won the other one, but I got to cover the 2012 College Cup on site, and so I think your teams have been part of two of the most memorable, entertaining games of any level
that Maryland game
I've ever seen. That Maryland game was unreal, and then the final was absolutely unreal.
Felt similar in a lot of ways, So we should. We should be getting a bye to the College Cup, right? The NCAA should be letting us go right there. We're a heck of an entertainment value for them, but it's true, right? We have been a part of two really exceptional games at that level, that platform, and listen, it's not us though; it's the opponent you're playing against too. Like, those games don't happen without two really good teams, who, in my opinion, believe in what they do. Right? They're two good teams that are highly talented, that are going to show up and are going to say, we're going to swing at you, you swing at us, but we think our punch is going to be harder. And we're not going to, go conservative. We're not going to sit and counter and do something different from how we're built. It's like, we just think we're good enough. And, that Maryland team in 2012 was so good. They were so good and deep, and they came at you in waves. And we felt we were going to be what we were, and we just had a lot of confidence in what we did. And the game was spectacular. And then the final, thank goodness, I think both teams had that same mentality. That Virginia team was the best Virginia team I've seen since I've been at Georgetown in the last 14 years. And that includes the team, their team that won it all in 2014. I thought this team, George Gillivat, did an unbelievable job putting that team together this year. And it just those kinds of games only come when you have two teams that are really good and aren't going to compromise what they do and play free. I think the teams have confidence and they can go and they're not great for the heart of the coach, right? And I don't even think I really appreciated how good the game was afterwards. Like, you're just like, man, you put yourself through this roller coaster of things. You're like, I don't even know if was it a well played game. I just, you're not even sure. But I think it was needed for college soccer. I think it's really tough when you have this Friday Sunday format. It's the only time all year we had to play a game with just 1 day rest between. It was the national semifinal into the national final. So we got to change that. But in that setting, it was remarkable that our guys and the Virginia guys were able to put on that kind of performance at that high level with their legs probably screaming at them the entire time. I think and listen, we used a ton of players. We had 20 players we were using through the game. Virginia used maybe 12 or 13. And to their credit, I thought they were going to run out of gas and really open things up, and they never let it happen. So the game was fantastic. I thought it was a good advertisement for college soccer, but it was needed. If you look back at the run of finals in men's College Cup games for the last several years, they're all 1-0, 1-0. It's a penalty kick, but that's just our game. Our game in 2012, we had that 4-4 thriller in the semifinal, And then 2 days later, we have a 1-0 yawner against Indiana, and they found a goal and we didn't. But there wasn't a whole lot in that game worth remarking about, and that's a real shame because it has nothing to do with the quality of the teams. It's just the setting that they're put in.
You probably don't have to waste too much time with these conversations online and that sort of thing, but it's become very fashionable to kind of dismiss or mock even college soccer, right? And there are a lot of problems, and there's a lot of shortcomings to the stuff we're talking about: the scheduling, the season, the antiquated nature of the NCAA rules that Sasho and others are taking aim at. But I think people have gotten a little too pat in terms of, and that game being played right after the news of the draft kind of getting downgraded in MLS's sphere. I would have to think there's a satisfaction you get from winning in style, and given that sort of wider discussion maybe that's happening.
Yeah, and I think when you look at like that game is a good example. It's like there's a lot of players playing in that game that are impact pros. Joe Bell and DK and Kessler, these guys are all, Virginia's loaded with these guys who are going to be playing, having a career, and I'd like to think that a lot of the Georgetown guys out there will be doing the same. And the relevance of college soccer in the development and the entire landscape of American soccer is that's never going to go away, in my opinion. It's too important. It's too broad a spectrum of players. The quality of the facilities are too good. The lure of the academics for sharp kids is and the quality of the coaching and it's just there. And so, it's like everything else. There's a divisiveness that I would love to see addressed in soccer in general, right? One which is, and to be frank, I think a lot of it has to go with U.S. soccer's stance has been very insular in how they've structured what they think is important and how they've messaged that. I think U.S. I haven't done the numbers, so this analogy may be terrible, but if you look at how many people there are in the U.S., there's was it 300 million or something, some huge number of people in the United States. A certain percentage of them are going to play soccer, but a huge percentage are high school kids, right? Not all of those kids can afford the DA or an ECNL or a travel club or whatever. A lot of those kids aren't going to be good enough to be playing in college or beyond, and but boy, the volume of those kids right out there playing a sport that's wonderful to play. You have all of these different levels of youth organized soccer. I mean, rec. You got the DA, you got ECNL, you got National League, you got you name it. There's so many different levels of travel soccer out there. You have college soccer, Division I, Division II, Division III, JUCO, NAIA. You go through a list of like what college soccer is on its own is impressive breadth of it. You have USL, you have MLS. You go through this. It's an amazing array of different places for people to play. And if you don't embrace all of those and how they can help, what's to say the next great player that we're trying to develop as a country is somewhere in an urban market, New York City, LA, maybe won't even be playing high school soccer, but maybe that's where they're going to pop up. That's the place that they can play an organized brand. Somebody's going to find them there, but they've been hidden away. But that's the vehicle that's going to emerge that kid. What's to say it's in a small market, right? It could be somewhere in rural Montana. There's some gem out there, right? And he's not able to find an organized team, but he's got somewhere that someone's going to see him and then find the next thing. You have to cast such a wide net to get what we really want, to take advantage of the fact that we're a 300-something million population country, to A, find all the talents out there, B, breed a fan base that's rooting collectively for all of the different levels and the national team, the MLS teams, all those things. we have to embrace what those things are and understand. It's like, yeah, the majority of your great players are probably going to come through a mainstream channel of a development cycle. But man, some of those outliers, who knows where those stars are going to pop up. And for college soccer, a lot of the great players for us, Dylan Nealis, who's just taken third overall by Miami, as a 17, 18-year-old freshman, no pro team's going to take him. He's super talented, super athletic. All those pieces are there, but he needed college to mature into the player he's become, which is a potential starting MLS right back as, a 21-year-old kid. And without college soccer, he's working on Wall Street maybe somewhere right now, right? He's not playing because the system isn't ready for him. So he needed that. So there's hundreds of stories of, and not just for college soccer, all these different things, but how do we keep ourselves big? How do we build our fan base? Because at the end of the day, how do we raise MLS salaries? TV needs to start kicking in. TV kicks in when people become fans of the sport, and that's this giant breadth of soccer, right? So when you alienate these things, when you say we're not going to take anybody into the national team unless they play in this tiny sliver of our development model, all that does is start alienating all these little pieces, or college soccer isn't good enough, or when Jurgen Klinsmann is talking about this is the worst idea ever that Clint Dempsey's coming back to play in Seattle. He made a huge mistake as a national team coach by doing that. He needed to call up Clint Dempsey himself and say, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this. But then he needs to hang up the phone and celebrate that Clint Dempsey's coming to MLS publicly. Because theoretically, the long term of that is Clint Dempsey's going to raise a profile. He's going to make the caliber of the league better. And the caliber of the league is a bunch of Americans running around playing at professional soccer, which will then eventually produce, that's where your national team base is really growing out of. And so all of these things for me, and going on, but all of these things for me is we are very good right now at creating this huge nation and making us the size of Iceland, effectively. We're creating ourselves a pool that would be the equivalent of saying, well, let's just make ourselves the size of Iceland and see if we can compete and outperform the rest of the world like Iceland does, right? And it's a hard thing to get your head around, I think, in a lot of ways. But boy, if we get somebody who can really figure out how to embrace and knit all of these things together and how they can be relevant and helpful, and then it can be pretty dang powerful in terms of how we're going to grow and develop as a soccer nation.
Well, yeah, following on from that, there's a strong perception, and some coaches have told me outright, like, I recruit DA events because that's the densest collection of talent. You know what you're getting. Going, and maybe you go to a National League, showcase event or something, or add to it here and there. But there's this perception that if you're not in this certain sphere of competition, you don't even get eyes on you.
Well, I mean, the reality is that is the efficiency of recruiting. You go where you're going to see the most talented kids, and the DA events are good events to go to, and those kids are very good, and they tend to get pulled in. So the DA will pull in guys who are good if they're doing their job, and these MLS academies are doing their job. They should be pulling the best kids they can find anywhere in the country to be then working on. And so they do a lot of sort of self-recruiting, but the National League stuff, the ECNL, these are great events. And so, it's just getting out to see the ones and the number of exposures. I think from a recruiting point of view, the real trick for any kid who has talent, because at the end of the day, if you're not good enough and you're playing the DA, that's not going to get you recruited. And if you're good enough and you're playing in the ECNL or National League or high school, or whatever it is, you have to be seen. That's okay. As long as you're good enough, you're going to be okay. But the level of competition is important for development. But the number of exposures that a coach sees a kid is really the trick. So how do you get seen enough that will not be like, that kid had a good game, he's got some real talent, and then now what? How do we see that kid again? And so, the youth soccer scheme used to be very nodal, where everybody would go to this event around the country, and then everyone would go to this event in San Diego, and everybody would go to this event in Maryland, and this event in Orlando, and this event in Dallas, and this, and you'd see the same teams play over and over and over at all these different places and all these different coaches. So you had these huge number of exposures of everybody nationally, and those events have changed in a lot of ways, and now you'll see things more regionally. So we'll see a lot more teams from Maryland and Virginia and up the 95 corridor up into New York and Connecticut, and anything that's drivable, right? Those events become the exposures, and so seeing, it's a huge advantage to be local now, where it didn't make as big a difference, funnily enough. Mm. Now I find it's a huge advantage to be local because things are typically more one-off games all over the place. And then you have the odd tournaments that you go to, and then you have to sort of pick and choose. But the problem with the tournaments is they can be less exposures there, right? So if I go to Surf Cup in San Diego, I find a kid I really like, but I may not see that kid ever again. And so you're like, you're going to recruit a kid off of one viewing. It's tough to do and feel really good about what they're going to be. Mm-hmm. So we rely heavily on camps as recruiting vehicles, and we'll either see kids that we like and try to get them here so we can really work with them, or we'll see them at camp, and then we'll try to then get back out and see them with a club team. So you sort of do one or the other. We see them initially with a club team, and then you work with them, or we work with them. We're like, well, let's see what this kid's like with his club team, and then you go back out and you do some version of that, because that ensures an exposure to what the kid's good at, what the kid's not, what his work ethic's like, all those things, which is the value of camps. But camps themselves are really dodgy endeavors. Like, how do you get the right camp where you're going to be seen in a competitive environment where someone's going to feel good about what they're seeing? These are all hard questions to answer, right? And
probably hard for kids to know whether they're legitimately on the radar or a target for the whatever $100.
Well, and the NCAA rules have shifted now so that if anybody's a freshman or a sophomore, and it used to be if we sat down and watched a game and there's a sophomore playing in it and the kid was special, we would tag that kid. We could go home, pick up the phone, call his club coach, and say, hey, Johnny, you're little number 10, Johnny, he's pretty great. What's the story with him? And then you'd have this conversation with the club coach. Say, hey, well, that's great. Have Johnny call me so we can talk. Or let's get him on campus, and then we can walk him around and show him around, and we can talk. And now they've changed the rules so that if we see a freshman or a sophomore and they're special, we can't do any of that. We can't call and talk to the coach about him. The coach calls us and says, hey, what do you think? We want him. Are you going to recruit him? We have to say, listen, we can't talk about him until he's going to be a junior. So those restrictions are really real. But what it means is the only thing that the NCAA lets us do is send camp information to those kids. That's it, right? So everyone's getting that same thing, and and some of them some of these are real money makers, and other ones are. For us, we just use our database. So if anybody writes us, we put them in our system, and then we'll send them camp info. Or if we see a kid, we enter them in our system. If we see a kid we like them, we'll send them camp info. So it could be someone that's just sent us something, or it could be someone that we think could be really good. They still get the same thing. But once junior year starts, that's when you can call. That's when you can text. That's when you get a real feedback, and that's when you get a real sense of, oh, this got some legitimate interest. This makes some sense. Coaches are just trying to get a feel for me, or these coaches really know me well. And the really hard thing about the recruiting process for kids and families is almost all of them are going through it for the first time. They have no idea, right? They're walking into uncharted territory all the time, and while there are certain guidelines which are helpful, every single kid that I've ever recruited, every guy on our roster, the 28 guys we had on our team last year, is like, they all got here in a uniquely different way. Mm-hmm. So there's the randomness of it is kind of maddening for a lot of parents, because some of it has to do with just the pure chance of when you saw a kid, when you maybe didn't see a kid, how you line up their academics, you lose a recruit that you thought you were going to get who's a left back, and then suddenly the next game you see is this kid who's a lot better, who's a left back that you've only seen for the first time ever. Well, if that other kid had decided to say yes, he was coming to your school, that kid who's the best left back ever, it becomes irrelevant. And it has nothing to do with anything other than just timing and circumstance and serendipity and all that. And so how they get seen, how a coach, I always like to say how a coach falls in love with a player. So, when we go off to, I was with my assistant out in Indiana watching, a couple of days of games, indoors, thank God, it was freezing. And, I'm sitting there, we're watching, and what you're really looking for, and I can't tell you why it happens, but you're really looking for the thing that makes you fall in love with a kid, right? As a coach, you're like, something makes you fall in love with a player. You're like, man, this kid, I want to see him play again. I'm excited about him for some reason, and it could be any number of reasons. And that's kind of the fun of recruiting, is being like, man, this kid, I want that kid in our team. And when you got a player that you're gonna want to recruit, because it's like, I love something about that guy. I want to have him. And that's the fun part about sitting and watching games. You're always hopeful you're going to fall in love with somebody, right? Mm-hmm. So, and it's exciting when you find a player you're excited about, right? It's like it's a wonderful little rush when you're like, you come home from a game and you want to call your assistants and be like, I saw a kid that is so great. Mm-hmm. You guys got to see him. Tell me what you think. And then all you're waiting for him to see. You want your assistants to see him and be like, I hope he says the same thing. I hope he likes him too. Those are the fun times of recruiting. That's why you go out and do it.
Can you say that every kid that comes here you have that moment?
In some way, yeah. In some way, there's something about him, because it's to make a commitment to bring a kid into a team. What you're bringing in 6, 7, 8 kids in a class, and you're looking at thousands, right? To filter out there, and again, how they all get there is kind of this horribly unique. Untraceable pathway that no one else is going to follow. So, but yeah, everyone, there's something you're like, I'm excited about this for this kid. There's something about this kid, right? There's not a single kid you're like, well, we'll just bring him in. There's not a single kid you'll ever say that about. You're like, there's some other kids where you're like, boy, really think this is going to work out. And other kids you're like, I hope it works out because I like this about him, right? I like this certain way about him. But every guy you have on your roster, there's something where you're like, yeah, this could be pretty fun. This could be really fun, and they have that. There's that element of excitement about why you're getting them, right? So when we get a commitment, I've done this since I've been a head coach at Georgetown. Is I always take my staff out for burgers. We go to a burger joint, and I treat them to burgers, so we celebrate the commitment. The superstition is we can't get another commitment until we eat our burgers. And so we're always a little nervous. We're always nervous with the timing of that. If you have 2 guys like we're trying to get and one kid commits, we got to eat the burgers fast so that we don't lose the other kid. But it's really motivation just for my staff to work hard, because they like eating. They like getting free lunch. So, but we've been doing that, and every time we talk about like, why are we excited about this kid, and this is great, and congrats on it. Like, we sort of congratulate ourselves on someone we're happy with.
Mm-hmm. Do you? I hear a lot of talk of the informal networks that kind of make this game go in a lot of ways, in terms of, do you have a network of people that hit you up when they see someone that they think you should have your eyes on?
All the time, yeah, all the time. And listen, there's people you trust. There's alums that are somehow getting back into coaching. It's really tough when, even if you know someone, if they don't know you or they don't know your team, the calibration is really hard. And so when I get an email from a club coach or a high school coach that I don't know, and they say, hey, I've got this kid who's going to be the next Messi, it doesn't help you. It really doesn't, because you don't know what that player's really like. But more importantly, that club or high school coach doesn't really know what I value, what the standard I'm looking for is. And that kid may be the next Messi, but he also might not be anywhere close to what we need or what we like or whatever. And so it does nothing. It does almost nothing, right? So that's the hard part. But what does give you value is when I do know that guy. That guy played for me, or that guy coached against me, and he's now an assistant at a league rival, and he's got these guys. And man, this guy would be a good fit for you. Or this network of assistant coaches I've had who are out there who are like, man, I just saw this kid. You got to find him. You got to see this guy. Those things mean a huge amount, and those guys become priorities for us to see, because they know exactly what we are looking for. Probably what the style of play is going to be. That's going to be a good fit, and those things matter hugely. So a reference, sort of a call being made on your behalf, doesn't do a whole lot. From my point of view, doesn't do you a whole lot of good unless that reference has that nice connection. In which case, you should be like, call them again. Like, if you have that connection, you recognize there is a proper link. Not just, hey, we met at some point in a coaching course, but we know each other well, or I played for you, or something. When you have that connection, like those are unbelievably important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Could you give a sort of your distillation of what a Georgetown player looks like? Those traits that you fall in love with.
There's a lot of traits that a good player can have, and the one thing that I think we've developed over my time here, and I've been lucky to have a staff of assistant coaches over the years that have been unbelievably good, and good at recognizing that the things that I value are, first and foremost, to be honest, like, you have to be a good soccer player. So, like, what does that mean? But, like, your ability to technically handle the ball is really important for how we play, right? So if you're a center back and all you are is just a raging athlete and nobody's going to score on you, that's got real value. But if our goalkeeper rolls the ball out to you and you just want to give it to somebody else as fast as possible, it's going to be really hard for us to play you. So that big soccer playing piece, the technical ability to keep the ball, value the ball, be comfortable on the ball, like that's almost a non-negotiable. Because with how we want to play, if you have 9 good field players and a capable goalie with his feet, but one guy who's not up to it, like, we're going to turn the ball over in bad places and lose games all the time. And so once you check that box, though, then you can do all sorts of other things, right? Then we'll take the lockdown defender. That's also nice to have, too, right? The guy who can clean up everything. Mm-hmm. But then when he has the ball, he's very good. Joshua Yarrow was a really good example for us of a kid. He was a center back and was one of the fastest players I've ever been around. But when you put him in a possession box, right, he's our center back. He'll eat up anything. You hit a ball anywhere, he's going to get to it first. And you put him in a possession box, he's never going to turn it over either. Mm. So suddenly he's got this wonderful value because he's got soccer to him. And for me, that's what makes him special. And he goes number 2 overall to the Union back in 2014. So it's or 2015 was it? So the other traits, though, can be great in the air. He's a great leader. He's a great 1v1 defender, 1v1 attacker. He's any number of sort of traits you might want to check off. Well, then we'll fill in the gaps around that too. Mm-hmm. But listen, the kids need to have drive, and they need to love their soccer, and then at the end of the day, they got to understand why they're at Georgetown, which is they got to be great students, and they got to, we take a lot of pride in guys trying to graduate and be pros. Mm-hmm. And so if guys come here just wanting to be pros, they're not the right fit. If they're coming here just to be a student and play soccer, because they have to, they're not the right fit. We want guys who are addicted to the game and they want to be out. Like right now, we have a team. We just won the national championship, and I couldn't be prouder of the current guys, because the big question after you win a national championship is what? Are we going to be hungry to do it again? What's our motivation level? Are we going to be sort of fat cats and stroll around and think we're good and get clobbered by everybody we play next year because we didn't work, put the work in to repeat? And our current group, we've just started our first week of training. Our current group is out there. We have 9 a.m. training. They're out there by 8:15, 8:30. Without coaches, they want to put themselves through some exercises. They want to do some. They just love playing, and I'm like, that has me excited, because I feel like that is the precursor for a group that's driven because they love to play. Mm-hmm. And then they're done with training. They're all stressed out because they have to get to class. Perfect, right? I don't want the guy who's like, whatever, I'll be late to class. I want the guy who's stressed because he might be late to class. I want that kid. Mm-hmm. But I also want the kid who's going to come early and start working on training before it begins. Like, that's the perfect kid. And we got a bunch of them right now, so I'm hopeful that translates well.
You touch on spring season starting, and I have to say, reading the NCAA limitations that are imposed on you guys are like from a soccer perspective are bewildering sometimes, right? You can do X amount with weights and run and fitness training, and then there's this like little box of soccer work allowed. And I think I've heard you speak in support of Sasho's and the 21st century models advocates, their ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Could you give a little insight into your approach to that and how you sort of try and make a soccer playing team, a ball playing team in this environment?
In a split season environment?
Or in the current what you currently have?
I actually think it's not bad for that. I think the split season model is got benefits in some real benefits and some things that actually, this isn't one of my big picadillos. I actually think we train more than enough in the winter and spring, and the reason I say that is, and the typical model for us is we play a fall season. They're going like crazy. The problem is like they're going like crazy. 2 games a week. Pop. You're missing tons of class for travel. You got somebody rolls an ankle, they're out for 6 games. For a standard ankle sprain if it's timed poorly. Those are the issues with the single season, just the fall season stuff. But when you get to the winter and the spring, right now, the guys come back. You're in what's called an 8-hour period, which doesn't sound great. But what do we really want them doing is I give them their weekends off in the winter. They need they get their little 6-week break after the end of the fall to when they come back. They're in here. We'll train 3 days a week with coaches, and then they'll do 3 days of lifts. They'll do some runs, and they'll do something Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and it's perfect. No problems. Because they got to build their legs back. If we went in and we're like, we're going to go 3 hours a day in soccer, we'd start pulling hamstrings and hip flexors, and the whole thing would go. So they actually need to start vamping up their fitness anyway. And the amount of soccer they do for those periods of weeks is actually pretty thorough. And they need the weekends to recharge, and then they go again Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so they're doing plenty of strength work. And usually, what it means is, at some point, the captains will they'll either go for a run, or if they want to play, we can't be there. That's the only difference for one of those sessions. We'll say, well, you guys just play pickup, play, which is healthy for them too, right? It's like you sort of see how they do with without us telling them how to do it, and and usually, I'm sure the field is microscopically smaller than it normally is because they don't want to run so much and this, but listen, they're playing pickup, right? Like they're having fun, they're playing, they're going, but they're still playing, they're getting their touches, and that only lasts for a little bit of time, and then once the 20-hour period starts, say mid-February, you're only looking at that for maybe 4 weeks. Then you're going. We still give them actually the weekend off at that point because now we are in earnest training Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday with soccer, and we're continuing to do 3 days of strength and conditioning. Their bodies can't handle much more than that anyway, and so it ramps up when spring break hits. We give them spring break because they're grinding away, they're going. When spring break ends, they're coming back. We're now playing our spring league games, so you play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then now you're adding a game on Saturday. You give them Sunday off. And you do that. Easter week comes, they need a break. They're going to get Easter week, and then they finish another. And then summer comes, they're all off to play with their PDL teams or back with their U23 teams or wherever they are. They're playing plenty of soccer. The amount of soccer they play, I think people who talk about it, they look at the theory of it, they're not ingrained in any of the top programs out there. And it's not like we're breaking rules and compliance is saying, hey, what are you're making up stuff. It's like no, we're well within all of the guidelines of what they're for and how they're meant to be done. They're playing, in my opinion, they're playing as much as they need to be playing over a 12-month period. It's actually totally fine. So we actually build in breaks because we think they might get burned out over the spring with how much they play.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a good sign. I mean,
I think it's been great. Yeah, that's not the issue for why we want to split the season for me at all. But it's there for these guys to develop. You develop well in the right environments, in the right college environments. The development's not the problem. The lack of 20-hour period and all that. these guys play a ton. They get better. I actually think they sometimes play more than some of the pros do.
Do you think that the 21st century model, if it gets implemented, we're counting down to April when the vote happens, do you really think it could make the decision harder for those kids maybe that you're talking to, but also want to go pro and want to kind of have it all?
I actually don't think that's not going to be a kid sitting in his living room saying, should I go pro or should I go to college? Oh, now college has got a split season. That makes my decision to go to college. I don't think that's going to sway anything. I just think it'll be better for the kids who do come to college. I think we'll have a better sort of run of it. You know, your college players who are gonna be pros. The split season makes a huge amount of sense. You know, you're playing a game a week. You're training. You're developing. You're not over, because those players are the ones you're going to want to play a lot, right? Those pro guys are your 90-minute guys, your 80-minute guys that you don't want to take off the field. Mm-hmm. You're not playing in overtime, and you got to do that on Wednesday, and then do that again on Saturday, and do that again on Wednesday. Those pro caliber guys, a lot of times, are those minute kind of guys, and so you can run them into the ground, and suddenly injuries start coming up, and that becomes a different problem. But for that pro level guy who's a 90-minute guy, Saturday, I'm not missing class to travel for a midweek game. I have time to regen, get my legs back under me, have a couple of days to work on something, for training a bit, play again. That tempo of what the year is makes a ton of sense for those guys. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think it'll sway decisions. Mm-hmm. I don't think that'll change, but I think it'll be, for the ones who do decide to go to college, I think it'll be better for them.
Yeah, it's just I have to say I found one of Sasha Zrovsky's that idea really compelling. This idea that this could be, I mean, it may sound like big talk, but the idea of the biggest, best U23 league in the world, to me, that's not beyond the scope of reason, because you talk to professionals who come from other countries, and they're like, even a D3 school in this country has pro-level facilities compared to the international game.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Yeah, I don't think people in the U.S. appreciate what we have just built into our institutions from a facility support point of view. It's unbelievable, and it's just, you know, we have it all over the place and a huge volume of it. I think that's a good way of thinking of it. Is, you know, college soccer is an excellent U23 league, mm-hmm. Really good one. Yeah, and this will help with that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Shifting gears a bit here, I was looking back at some of the numbers, and I don't have them in front of me, but Georgetown had, I think it's safe to say, the program was kind of in the doldrums before you got here. There was a little bit of a tournament drought, and more or less since your arrival, like, the trajectory has been dramatic, and winning a national championship maybe drives it home, but it seemed like you did pretty incredible work to get this program, just even to get it to contention and making it a national power. I'm curious as to if you have any reflections on that process, how you got things headed in an upward direction, and, you know, what you think worked best.
Yeah, things can be cyclical, you know. So momentum is a real thing in teams and in programs, and you know, the era before I got here, Georgetown wasn't funded with athletic aid, really. It was being added in as I got here. So, you know, the men's soccer gets 9.9 scholarships as a maximum, and you know, we were at like 4 or something. Mm-hmm. And they were starting to add it in. And the Big East, bless their soul, said, if you're going to be a Big East soccer team or a Big East member, right, to play in our beautiful conference, you have to fund men's soccer competitively, which means where you have to get up to 9.9 scholarships. So we, as an institution back in 2006 when I got here, was in the process of coming compliant with that mandate. And the single biggest influencer for our ability to be successful was that mandate by the Big East. So I have to thank the Big East as a conference to be fair, for all the teams that are in it now have the same, you know, situation where when you could take a kid and try to make Georgetown affordable, and you have athletic aid to help with that, you know, that allows you to get difference makers. who are the right kind of kids, the right kind of character kids, the right kind of. You can sort of pick and choose much more. You have a much bigger net that you can cast and get kids to the right fit. So, but even with that, I think when you're just around the right people, I think I have to take a lot of steps back and always look at your staffs are very important. Zach Samuel was with me for a long time. He's now the head coach at AU. Mm-hmm. He was with me for 13, 14 years, and building the culture of what kind of player you want, how you're going to run your sessions, how you're going to what the standards are you're going to demand. Brian Gill, who's with me for a while, is now the head coach of Penn, hugely influential in finding the right kinds of kids. Josh Shapiro, who all he does is he was with me for the first 4 or 5 years. These guys, he was at Tufts. He won 4 national championships at Tufts. Just took over at Harvard. These are just great people to build a program with because they value the right people. Right? It's not just about like this player's great. It's like this player's great, but man, I don't think he's someone we want to have around. That mattered to those guys. Excuse me. And you forget really quickly is the first few years were really hard. I mean, we were 6-11 my first year. We started in 2007. We started, I think, 2-7. So we're imagine that for an alumni base. You hire this new coach, this hotshot coach coming in from Notre Dame. This is gonna be great. We're gonna and we took a team that went 500 and then plunged them into 6-11. and then the next year you start off 2-7. And I had alums who were writing letters being like, "Hey, we got to get a new coach. This is a bad hire. This is right." And I'm sitting there saying, "Yeah, maybe." It's like it could be. You could be right. I'm trying as hard as I can, but we're not winning yet. But we're trying to get the right kids, and we're trying. It just takes some time, and I think the patience required early to try to get it right and learning how to do things right as a coach and putting kids in the right positions to succeed. And these are all lessons you learn. I was making all sorts of mistakes with those. We had good kids those first years. We had good kids. They were really good kids, great kids, and we were trying, but we were competing in an incredibly hard league. The Big East at that time was very different with how many, it's crazy when you think about what the Big East was back in 06, 07, 08. It was like, and before everything imploded in 2012, 2013, and all these football sort of leagues formed. Mm-hmm. But Lee Reed, who's our athletic director, took over here in 2010. And it's not a coincidence that in the 10 years that he's been here, since 2010 to this year, 2019, we won the Big East in 2010 for the first time ever. We went to the NCAA final in 2012. We got to a Sweet 16 in 2013, Elite 8 in 2014, Sweet 16 in 2015. Tournament team in 17, Sweet 16 in 18, won the national championship. It's an unbelievable run of success, and that goes because you have an athletic director who says, "Well, why can't we win at soccer? What do we need to do to win?" And so he's in the office saying, "How are we doing? What do we need?" Versus, I don't know if we listen. I understand what you want, but we can't do it for this reason or that. He's an enabler. And when you get an athletic director who is setting you up for success as a program and is trying to build and understands that, it's wonderfully inspiring. Mm-hmm. And I think when you are around that kind of leadership, when I'm lucky enough to surround myself with great staff and coaches. I have my current staff is an unbelievable group of coaches and people. It just feeds on itself. Good people attract good people. And I believe that in recruiting, that when you start getting the players that you really resonate with, when you find those players you fall in love with, and then they come on campus and you're like, oh, this kid's great. He's hungry, and he's a good person, and he wants to give back to the community. And right, you find these like gems of people. When you get them here, you have to fight sometimes to get those kids here. But when you get them here, you put every recruit you have in with that kid because you want that recruit to look up to that guy and be like, well, that's one I want to hang out with. Mm-hmm. And if that kid says that about a gem that you found, then there's a good chance he might be a like type mm-hmm. person. And then that builds another one, right? It starts becoming a self-feeding thing. And if you get good people surrounding good people, and you get players who want to win, and they're around other people who want to win, and then they know how to do it, and then they are now in the culture, it just becomes this machine that you have to tend to very carefully. But it becomes predictable that you're going to continue to have sort of this momentum that hopefully continues to move forward. But it's the right people that you got to get it right with. The facilities are usually important. We've had these upgrades, this, that, and the other, but it's really getting the right people in here. So the biggest single thing that we've got going for us was that we got athletic money to find those gems and make Georgetown affordable for the right ones.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Sounds like you're not a red-headed stepchild, maybe as you would have experienced, like your previous story about one of your past employers kind of being an afterthought. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys matter here.
That's the fun of this place, right, is that soccer's a big deal, right? And that's, listen, Georgetown's a special place for a lot of reasons. It's not a perfect place, but, I don't think I would, you look at Notre Dame, where I had an unbelievably great experience with 5 years around great people, all the support you could ask for, these wonderful facilities, and this, who doesn't want to think about going to Notre Dame? But when we were number one in the country, back in, maybe 2003, I want to say, and Notre Dame football was having an unbelievably bad year, we couldn't get a single student out to any of our games because it didn't matter. Football was where you went. They didn't care that they were 2-9. They're still going to go to the football game. The weekend was what it was. That's why they were all going to Notre Dame. Here, we are a big deal with the student body, right? Our students love coming to soccer games. It's a big difference in terms of how your perception is and how you're valued. All those things matter, mm-hmm. and you feel that here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've taken more of your time than I wanted to, but I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, because you're not just a coach, you're now a youth soccer parent, and I'm wondering what it's like for your daughters coming up, what your view of the youth soccer landscape is as a parent.
Oh man, it's tough, right? I've had one daughter who went through. Played with Bethesda and played on a really great team with the Bethesda club, and it's really interesting going through the recruiting process as a parent. I was like, oh, okay, it's stressful. Yeah, turns out, right? And then I have another daughter who plays competitively, who's 4 years younger, so she's a freshman now. She's playing in the McLean system, and I think you can lose sight really quickly on when you're in it, and you're a parent and you got a 11-year-old kid, and it matters to the kid, and the team's serious, and they're in a game or they're in a tournament. It's unbelievable how quickly you can lose perspective on what that situation is and how important it is, and obviously you have you have the parents who go crazy about this, that, and the other, and like, oh, gee, it's like just watch the game and enjoy the game, right? Like I sit there and I have a different perspective. Listen, we're in a shootout on national television for a national championship game, and that's stressful. So when I sit on the sideline and my daughter is playing in a league game, I'm just happy he's watching her run around, and the referee gets a call wrong. It's like, well, of course that referee got a call wrong. All referees are terrible referees. Why would that make me upset? That's a common thing, right? Everyone knows that. So why should that be upsetting? And I think the perspective of the fact is when you look back at that 11-year-old when they're 13 or 14, you'll be like, oh man, look how young those kids are. But when you experience them as 11, they're not 11. They're like the old kid in your life, and this matters hugely. And then you have that perspective, and then suddenly when they're 17, and you look back to when they're 14, you're like, oh, look how young they were then, right? Does that really matter? And then, but like right now, boy, this is when it really matters because they're 17 now, and they go, and then they're in college, and you look back, it's like, oh, that was just club stuff. This college stuff, this really matters again. It's like it always matters more than it should at that moment. But then in hindsight, you're always like, they were kind of young. It wasn't a big, it was just, right? And so I don't know. I've been in the game a long time, and I do give myself some credit in that I am able to go to the games and enjoy just watching them play. And they win, they lose. You give them a hug and be like, how was it? Was it fun? Did you enjoy it? Was it? And they start talking about the referee, and you're like, yeah, referee wasn't great, but that's what it is. And the only thing you do, because it does happen more than it should, is parents lose their marbles with the referee, or they lose their marbles with each other, or with a coach, or with it's just like, yeah, boy, I wish it didn't matter so much to them, So, or you just wish they could really just enjoy watching their kid play, and let the kids go through the experience of it, right? And but there's something about when you become a parent, you become crazy in youth sports, right? And we need some antivirus drug for that, where you can pop it in and be like, I'm going to be non-crazy parent today. I'm going to take my pill. But that doesn't exist yet. That doesn't exist. So, but listen, it's such an ultra competitive thing, and people spend a lot of money on it, and and the kids train hard all the time. I mean, good thing is my girls love playing, so they love going to practice. And that's the only thing I pay attention to is like, are they excited to pop up, put their uniforms on to go out to train at Tuesday night when it's about to rain, or are they like, oh man, I gotta? And I've been really blessed in that both of my girls they want to go, they love going, they want to go, and that's all I pay attention to. And as soon as I see that changing, I get a little nervous, and it's time to think about that. But that for me is the crux of it. And then hopefully they're having fun and getting better, and that's what it's about.
Yeah, that's great stuff. It's great to get your perspectives.
Nothing earth-shattering there, I don't think, but we
can't remind ourselves of that enough, though.
No, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
And look, over the years, I've had people tell me that if we had training compensation, or if we had promotion relegation, or if we had this, that, or the other concept, or we changed the system of things, then that maybe we could fix the things that we hate about youth soccer, the things that are insane about youth soccer. And I'm a little hard-boiled now. I just don't see it happening. No. I think we're going to be nuts about our kids' sports in America.
I think that's what I'm saying. There's this pill we haven't found it yet. If there's a pharmacy out there that can get the crazy parent pill made, they'll make a lot of money. Because I agree. I don't think you can structure it in a way where, that solved that problem. It doesn't exist. I think you just need what you really need is you need the coach and the club to have a culture of, this is how we do it, and this is right. And that's just, it's so hard. It's so hard to do it. But if you can find the right coaches that really foster that, then those are the places where you're like, yeah, that's a good place to be. The real issue is that some coaches don't foster that well. Some coaches want that competitiveness. They want that edge, and they themselves are pushing that envelope, and that can breed a tough sort of cycle there where it gets worse. So so crazy parent pill. I don't know. If you figure that out, I'll invest.
Thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate it.
So that'll do it for this week's episode. Again, I want to give my sincere thanks to Coach Wiese and his coaching staff for welcoming me over to the Hilltop for this conversation. I enjoyed it. I hope you did as well. And remember, listen, rate, and subscribe, and get at us on social media or via email or any other way that you'd like to get in touch to provide your feedback, comments, suggestions, requests for future topics, you name it. Thanks, and have a good one.